Ana Montes, American convicted of spying for Cuba, released from U.S. federal prison after 20 years. Another Cuban mole in the U.S. government. CNN. Ana Montes, an American citizen convicted of spying for Cuba, has been released from U.S. federal prison in Fort Worth, Texas, according to Federal Bureau of Prison online records. Cuba recruited Montes for spying in the 1980s, and she was employed by the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency as an analyst from 1985 to 2001. She was eventually promoted to be a DIA's top Cuba analyst. The FBI and DIA began investigating her in the fall in 2000, but in response to the September 2001 terror attacks, she had access to plans for U.S. attacks against Afghanistan and the Taliban. On September 21st, 2001, Montes was arrested in Washington, D.C. and charged with a conspiracy to deliver defense information to Cuba. In only 2002, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison after pleading guilty to espionage. The judge who sentenced Montes ordered her to be supervised on release for prison for 5 years. Regarding Montes' release, Florida Senator Marco Rubio slammed Montes for betraying the U.S. and assisting Cuba's communist regime. Americans should remember Ana Belén Montes for who she really is, despite the fact that she has served her time in prison. If we forget this spy's story, it will surely repeat itself, Rubio said in a statement released on Saturday. How the Queen of Cuba was recruited. Ana Montes, now 65, was known as the Queen of Cuba, an American who, for over a decade and a half, handed over so many U.S. military secrets to Havana that experts say the U.S. may never know the full extent of the damage. In 1984, Montes was working in clerical job at the Justice Department in Washington and studying for a master's degree at Johns Hopkins University. She often found herself rallying against President Ronald Reagan's support for labels fighting pro-communist regimes in Central America. She felt that the U.S. didn't have the right to impose its will on other countries, said FBI Special Agent Pete Rapp, the man who eventually led the investigation against Montes and ultimately arrested her. Her anger about U.S. foreign policy complicated her relationships and drew the attention of Cubans who enticed her to turn her back on friends, family, and her own country. Someone at Johns Hopkins noticed Montes' passionate views about Cuba, and soon she was introduced to recruiters and agreed to help the Cuban cause. At about at the same time, Montes applied for a job at the Defense Intelligence Agency, where workers handle U.S. military secrets on a daily basis. When she started there in 1985, the FBI says she was already a fully recruited Cuban spy. How she got cut? One night in 1996, Montes was called for concert at the Pentagon during an ongoing international incident, but she broke a protocol by failing to remain on duty until dismissed. This raised suspicion. 4 years later, DIA counterintelligence officer Scott Carmichael heard the FBI is looking for a more unidentified spy inside the DIA who was working for Cuba. The suspect had traveled to the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, at a specific time. when he looked up a list of DIA employees who visited Gitmo during those dates. A familiar name popped up, Anna Montes. The moment I saw her name, I knew. Carme Carmichael said. After that, Carmichael and the FBI agent Lep teamed up to prove that the DIA's Queen of Cuba was really a spy. Thanks to very sensitive intelligence, it was known that the unidentified DIA mold had bought a specific brand and make a model of computer at a specific time in 1998 from an unknown store in Alexandria, Virginia. Lap was able to find the store's original records that linked the computer to Montes, confirming their belief. CNN's Tom Patterson contributed the reporting.